obviously eye test doesn't really do anything, but now I think Indiana's starting to lose some of its luster because now when you bring up their strength of schedule, their strength of record, they're 106. And they're sitting, they can only control what they can control, which is going out and winning ball games, which they've done. But when you look at the quality of opponent that they've played, this Ohio State game Saturday is going to be more detrimental if they lose, especially if they get blown out, because then it's, well, we shouldn't even have y'all in the conversation anymore. But also, it kind of, if they make it close, it's okay, well, maybe they won't fall off that much. But if you get the benefit of Notre Dame that doesn't have to play a conference championship game. They went out, they're in. They need to just make sure they handle their business. But back to your point about Alabama being ranked higher than Georgia, at least they're still honoring the head-to-head matchups because both somewhat. But at least in this situation.
Yes.
But I think that the more we kind of look at how this thing goes, because I do think some of the matchups that we potentially could see, say if the playoffs started right now, BYU takes that trip to Ohio State, Alabama goes to Notre Dame, Georgia goes to Penn State, Ole Miss versus Indiana. The matchups seem pretty, you could go kind of either way with some of these games. But I think that the committee these next 2 weeks are going to be so pivotal of what the committee does because, okay, are they going to punish conference championship losers? Well, if you've handled your business in the regular season, I don't think it should be a detriment. But I do think that once these matchups happen with Texas A&M, because okay, if Texas A&M wins, 2 weeks from now, how far up do they go? How far down does Texas go? I mean, assuming Georgia handles their business the next 2 games, Alabama these next 2 games, it's okay. Where do they fall in the pecking order after that point? Because Texas A&M is then going to be going towards, pretty much an SEC championship game. And it's just, I don't know what the committee is kind of looking for, at least early on, especially now. But to see Boise State now get that first round bye, it's okay. They're at least honoring their commitment of saying, all right, yeah, BYU, you didn't handle your business against a Kansas team. No matter what it is, their record was 3-6 going into that ball game, and they got their 4th victory. So it's, okay, yeah, we're going to punish you now.
Yeah, and look, I guess no one really has a wrong opinion on this right now because we don't know how it's going to ultimately play out and what the committee's looking for. But I just feel people that you'll hear things out there, people that their belief is, well, they're not going to drop Texas all the way from number 3 out of the college football playoff if they lose to Texas A&M at the regular season. They're losing to a ranked team, and it's okay, they are, but you also have to look at their resume, and I think, again, I look at BYU. I think the reason BYU fell as far as they did is not obviously because they lost, but I think it's also the fact that was the committee's chance to kind of not get rid of them because they're still in play as a conference champion, but you get what I'm saying. Like, it was their way of saying, okay, we've played nice with you. We gave you the benefit of the doubt because you were undefeated. You've played with fire at times this year, and you finally got, and it kind of makes you go back and look at some of the other games and make you have some concerns about them being able to compete in a college football playoff environment. And that's just where I think you look at a team like, whether it's a Texas or an Indiana that gets blown out to an Ohio State, and it's, man, well, they're in the top 5 right now. Like, are they really going to tumble all the way out of the playoff picture with a loss? And again, we've seen Georgia lose. Granted, they got beat up by Ole Miss, but you lost to another ranked team and you dropped 10 spots. Like, I think that sends a clear message right now that if the committee wants to do that, then they are more than willing to do that, even if it's, not something we're used to seeing teams drop that many spots in 1 week after just a single loss. But I think they're kind of just setting it up for that to, be in play, especially if, like you said, if Ohio State really dominates Indiana, that's when you're going to start having the strength of schedule conversation. And then they're going to start bringing those things up more because they realize that a lot of people is as much SEC bias or as much SEC fatigue, I should say, as a lot of college football fans claim to have. I'm sorry. Do we want the best teams to be in or not? Do we want the most competitive matchups or not? I will say this: so Ward Manuel last night, the head of the committee, he was asked about a potential 3-loss conference champion runner-up and how that might impact them in the college football playoff. Obviously, that would be, your Alabama at 10-3 with a loss in Atlanta, a Georgia at 10-3, Ole Miss, what have you. And this is what he said. He said, quote, "We have a lot of value for the teams that make a championship game. Playing 12 games and making your conference championship game is a really valuable data point." So
Okay.
it's valuable. I still wish they could just come out and I understand you can't clearly come out and say, if you play in your conference championship game and lose, you're still guaranteed a spot in the playoff. Or if you go into your conference title game already in the top 12 or 11, whatever, you're not going to fall out of that spot. I don't know if you can guarantee that. Again, if we want other evidence of how they might look at a ranked on ranked loss, Missouri just suffered their 3rd loss of the year to South Carolina. They did not move a spot. They stayed exactly where they were in the top 25. So maybe
Yep.
that's something that makes you feel a little bit better if you're one of those 3-loss teams. But again, that's going to be the question that kind of looms over all of these rankings is, okay, this is all great and we have an idea of what the playoff picture looks like, but what happens if we get to conference championship weekend and you have a couple teams go down that were in the playoff and now they find themselves on the outside looking in? Is that going to happen? And then we're looking at a completely different college football playoff picture, or, are they truly going to say, all right, go play in your conference championship game. If it's at least a competitive loss, we're not going to ding you for that. And it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. One more quote from Ward Manuel from last night. So another question here in the SEC. I know you, Damian, brought up the head-to-head with Alabama and Georgia and Ole Miss and how they're honoring that. Well, obviously the head-to-head they're not honoring now is Tennessee's loss
Yep.
over Alabama. And there's not only that, but you have a somewhat significant gap now between an Alabama team with 2 losses and a Tennessee team with 2 losses. We talked about it yesterday on Mac and Cube when we were filling in. I think that Alabama on a neutral site would be favored to beat Tennessee right now. You're not as confident in that. I think we can agree, though, they're both worthy of being in the playoff right now. But this was Ward Manuel explaining why Tennessee was behind not only Alabama, but also Ole Miss and Georgia in the rankings. Quote, "Well, for one, they just had a loss at Georgia and they had the loss at Arkansas. It's really splitting hairs. They have a great offense, great defense. They play hard. The committee just had a hard time. You're talking about 4 really good teams when you look at Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia, and Tennessee. I think the committee, we debated it, as I said earlier, quite a bit as it came down to how we saw those teams. But they have beaten each other at different times, so we have to look at Alabama's last 3 games, particularly the 2 they played before Mercer. They won in dominant fashion, and we were really impressed with the win at LSU 2 weeks ago. It is close. There's a lot of conversations. We'll continue to monitor the performance of all these teams as the season progresses towards the end." So that is your response from Ward Manuel about why Alabama is at number 7 and Ole Miss is at 9, Georgia 10, and Tennessee at 11. Does that sit right with you?
It
or
doesn't.
No?
It doesn't. But hey, because okay.
Well, how would you order the teams? Truly, just in terms of if the idea of the playoff committee is the best teams need to get in right now.
Just out of the 4.
Those 4 SEC teams, how would you rank them?
Ole Miss, Alabama, Georgia, Tennessee.
Okay. So you do okay. So you can agree that Alabama right now is you're not trying to go fight Ward Manuel because Tennessee's behind Alabama.
No.
Okay.
No.
And I think that's fair. I think I would agree with that. I would say I would maybe put Alabama ahead of Ole Miss, but I think those are interchangeable right now.
Right.
And then, I think Georgia and then Tennessee. But again, I think they're all deserving. It's just pick a criteria, man. You got it's just
It's just Texas, man. Texas.
Oh, well, yeah. Oh.
I'm really starting.
Are you getting upset now?
It's frustrating because
it is.
To me, I just don't think they're head and shoulders right now the best. And the more I kind of dove into their schedule and how everything has shaped up, and then kind of looking at everybody else in the top 12 right now, it's like, okay, if Texas plays at their peak, what if the Georgia game didn't go the way that it did, I think I would feel a little bit different. But it's okay.
Absolutely.
The one team that has a pulse that they've played legitimately, they lost to them at home, and
Well, and that's
it's just like
why.
I understand now your frustration. Why do they get the benefit of the doubt because of that loss?
Yes, and I will just, and I know it's not an apples to apples comparison, but okay, if we're going to criticize Indiana for their strength of schedule, and Texas is better than Indiana's, I get
Mm-hmm.
that. But if we're going to criticize Indiana for their strength of schedule in the Big Ten and the way and who they've played, which it's not their fault that they've played the worst teams in the Big Ten, but that just is what it is. Okay, if we're going to discredit them or credit them for that, and then let's say they lose by 14 to Ohio State, are they really that different than Texas? You know what I'm saying? Like if we're sitting here ready to knock Indiana out of the playoff with a loss to Ohio State, why should we not be looking at Texas in a similar manner, right? You've had one opportunity to show us you were worthy of being a playoff team
Mm-hmm.
and you failed miserably in your own stadium. And now, like we were talking about with Indiana, your best win is against a Washington team maybe who's like number 8 in the Big 10 and the conference standings. Similar for Texas, your best win is Vanderbilt, who's what, ninth or 10th in the SEC right now. Again, like we've talked about, it's not a bad Vanderbilt team, but just when you compare that to what other teams have had to go through, and if you're asking me, am I going to take Texas over Georgia in a rematch? No, because I saw what Georgia did to them last time.
Exactly.
Am I going to take Alabama or Texas? Well, I've seen Alabama be able to go and dominate LSU on the road. I've seen them beat Georgia. I've seen them blow Georgia out for 30 minutes of football. Okay, am I going to take Ole Miss or Texas? Well, I just watched Ole Miss physically dominate Georgia, so I'm probably going to take them over Texas. And so again, it's just if we're ready to knock Indiana out of the playoff with the loss to Ohio State, I know they still get to play Texas A&M at the end of the year, but I'm like, it's really not that much different for Texas. They've just already played their Ohio State game
Yep.
and they got dominated and lost by 15 at home. So that's where the problem for me lies. Again, I think they're worthy of being in the top 12. I think ceiling wise, they have the potential to be one of the best teams, and it's not their fault that the schedule worked out the way it is. It's the SEC's fault for rolling out the red carpet for them. And unfortunately, it might ultimately come back to bite them because you're in the SEC now, but
Mm-hmm.
you're playing a schedule that is very reminiscent of, let's be honest, something you would have played in the Big 12, where you would have one big game a year and you would kind of get to play the bottom feeders of the conference the rest of the way. So,
Well, I tell you, this college football playoff committee, just when we thought we were figuring it all out, nope, not so much. 205-834-9450. We'll get your reaction on the other side, your text messages, your calls as well every single morning here on Morning JOX. Keep it locked on JOX 94.5. 625 here on Morning JOX, JOX 94.5. Damian Mitchell alongside Conrad Van Order and you as well, 205-834-9450, as we kind of just react and recap the college football playoff rankings that have been released. It kind of goes like this. Oregon number 1, Ohio State 2, Texas 3, Penn State 4, Indiana comes in at 5, 6 Notre Dame, 7 Alabama, 8 Miami, 9 Ole Miss, 10 Georgia, 11 Tennessee, 12 Boise State, 13 SMU, 14 BYU, and 15 Texas A&M.
So there is one scenario that I want to bring up and get your thoughts on real quick, Damian. And I'll just go ahead and say this doesn't involve the SEC. So, but this is something that I don't feel like we've really talked about, and it's something that who knows, maybe people haven't even realized that this is a possibility. Because to be honest, I hadn't until about a week ago. So if you look at the rankings, as I said at the beginning of the show, I would keep an eye on, you have at 19 Army, and at number 20 you have Tulane out of the AAC. And the reason that I say that is because in the college football playoff guidelines, the rules are that the 5 highest ranked conference champions get a automatic bid into the playoff. It is not the Power 4 conference champions and a group of 5 representative. It is the 5 highest ranked conference champions from whatever conference there are, any conference in FBS, right?
Right.
And so you have a scenario, an unlikely scenario, I will say, but you have a scenario where right now out of the Big 12, you have BYU sitting there at 14, you have Colorado at 16, technically, you have Arizona State and Iowa State there at 21 and 22 as well. But let's say one of those teams suffers a third loss and then goes to the Big 12 Conference Championship and wins. And so you have a 3-loss Big 12 champion, which is very different, I think we would all agree, than a 3-loss SEC runner-up or something like that. And so if you have a scenario where you have a not very good Big 12 champion, I think there is a scenario where Army or Tulane could jump up and be ranked higher than whoever wins the Big 12. And in that situation, the Big 12 would be completely left out of the college football playoff. Again, I think this is unlikely because I don't think BYU or Colorado are going to lose multiple games here in the final 2 weeks of the season and then go and, pull off a big upset or something in the conference championship. But
right,
just keep an eye. If there's a 3-loss team going into the Big 12 championship and they win, you might have, because Army could be undefeated, right? Tulane's they've looked really, really good lately. There's a chance that one of those teams could end up being ranked maybe even just one spot ahead of the Big 12. But in that case, the Big 12 would be left out of the playoff, and you would have Boise State out of the Mountain West and Army or Tulane out of the American Athletic Conference in the college football playoff, and the Big 12 would be at home.
That would be tough to stomach, but I don't think it's out the realm of possibility. But I'm kind of with you. I find it difficult to believe that BYU or Colorado is going to stumble. Well, I will say this: BYU's got Arizona State this weekend.
I was about to say that one will kind of figure itself out a little bit. And just saying, Kansas has now knocked off Iowa State. They knocked off BYU. And they play Colorado on Saturday. So they have a chance to really muck some things up in the Big 12.
It's spicy.
And they're fighting to get bowl eligible. So, hey, they were in the top 25 to start the season. I know it has not gone very well for them. But the last couple weeks, they have looked like the Kansas team that we thought we were getting at the beginning of the year. So, again, not saying this is a very likely scenario, but it is something that I wanted to throw out there because I think we all just assumed, okay, yeah, it's the Power 4 teams. Whoever wins those championships, they're all going to the playoff. And then, whoever the highest ranked Group of 5 team is. But the reality is you could have multiple Group of 5 teams in with automatic bids over a Big 10 or a Big 12 champion. I think the ACC is safe with SMU and Miami, but it's possible.
Yeah.
Especially with how far they dropped BYU after the one loss.
Right. And that's why I think that the real possibility of that happening is kind of, it's not far-fetched because of how far they dropped BYU after their loss to Kansas. And I mean, the American. I mean, at that point, if Army does say Army, runs the table, goes into the American Championship, and they're still undefeated, and they knock off at that point would still be a ranked Tulane team on top of winning in a conference championship. Does that kind of push it up a little bit? It depends on how much you weigh the American Championship versus Big 12. And
Yeah, again, I mean, teams in the Big 12 are going to have to lose for that. As it stands now, if you have an 11-1 BYU and a 10-2 Colorado in the Big 12 championship, whoever wins that is going to get in over a Group of 5 team.
right.
But never say never. As I think we have learned this season, there are any crazy scenario that we can throw out there on the table for you. I mean, do you really have that much? Is it really that hard to believe it could ultimately happen just with how crazy the season's been? So you never know.
Nah, you really don't. The one thing about this college football playoff, it continues surprises us every single Tuesday.
Yeah, and hey, I mean, I'm just saying, if you're, Arizona State's pretty good, man. They have they're a dangerous team, and maybe Colorado's distracted because their coach is going to be the Cowboys coach now. So
Oh boy, here you go.
I heard it
Okay,
I heard it on the internet, so it must be true.
It's got to be true.
Well, I heard it from Michael Irvin, so I don't know if that's I don't know how reliable he is.
You take that with a grain of salt.
He said he had a good source, so I think we know who it was.
Ain't no telling. 205-834-9450. We're going to take a little bit of a detour when we return here on Morning Jocks. We got a special guest hopping on with us. My former head coach from high school, Brent Hubbert. He has now been deemed as a Hall of Famer, as he has been selected to be inducted in the class of 2025 Alabama Sports Hall of Fame. We want to hear from him, have some fun, kind of go down memory lane, talk some ball, have a good time here on Morning Jocks. So keep it locked right here when we return on Jocks 94.5. Conrad know what's up. You know what's up. I appreciate that, big dog. You said the scene, baby. The brother don't miss.
Well, if you want to take a trip down memory lane, you might as well.
Yes, sir.
Go listen to some music that I guess you still like this somehow.
Hey, y'all, we love some Florida Georgia Line. You know who else loves some Florida Georgia Line? That would be my head coach, my former head coach in high school in Maplesville, and the current head coach of TR Miller, Brent Hubbert. Coach, what's happening this morning, man? Long time no talk, baby.
What's going on?
Hey, no complaints, man. First off, I want to say congratulations on your honor. You know, you have gone. I mean, listen, I can speak for days of how much of an impact you've had on my life and just the man that I am today. But you are now a Hall of Famer. You'll be inducted in 2025 Alabama Sports High School Hall of Fame. Kind of just talk about the honor and just your coaching career as you look back on it here in the later years.
Well, thank you to start with, but I think me personally, when I think back, I grew up a coach's son and really didn't know anything else because I basically lived in a field house or a gym. Well, back then they didn't have field houses, so I lived in gyms and on practice fields. I think I've been so blessed in the communities that it just fell into place that I was able to, I'm able to still and was able to coach where great players, great parents, great administrators, great faculty, great assistant coaches, and heck, I just happen to have my name inked at the top, man. And a lot of people do a lot of work to have a lot of success.
Here with Coach Brent Hubbert, the head coach of TR Miller right now. As you're getting set for this matchup with Houston Academy on Friday, I know how you get down, man. You probably got 17 different plays that you think of on the way to school, on the way to work, on the way to practice. You're drawing some stuff up. What's kind of the overall game plan without giving too much around here for the matchup with Houston Academy on Friday?
Damien, you've heard me say it before. We got to play mistake-free offense. Got to be sound. Got to swarm on defense and got to be real sound in the kicking game. You got to play good in the third round. You got to play good in all three phases. And team that makes the less mistakes and eliminates the big play the most is going to have a better chance to win the ball game.
Absolutely. And taking a trip down memory lane back in the days in old Maplesville, I know you got to dig into the archives because it's been about a decade since I've been around. But just one, just kind of talk about the community down there in Maplesville and just our success that we had there in our small town on the football field as well.
Well, I think, it started, the earliest I remember is back in the early 80s, and I was just a little ball boy and a manager and things like that around 83, 84. But I think they had some, success before the state started the wide open six classification playoffs in 84. And your dad at tailback, and the very ironic thing, he was my dad's tailback, and the quarterback on that team, his son turned out to be quarterback your senior year and played for me. But they made a deep run to the semifinals, and I think it just kind of jumped out right then. The community gets excited on Friday nights. You got people that they don't do anything else hardly during the week. They'll go to Miss Tammy's for some lunch a couple of days a week, and the next biggest thing is hanging out at that stadium on Friday night. The community rallies around. Small town, it's the same thing here in Bruton. Small town school, small town football, it's the only thing in town. If it's happening at the school, everybody's there, and that makes a tight-knit community.
And Coach, as you kind of reflect and you're still in the grind, but coaching and the sport of football has changed over the years. What drives Coach Brent Hubbert to continue to keep going at this level that you're going?
Well, I don't really have anything else I can do. And I don't know how well I can do this, but I do get up every day trying to be, the same thing that we tell the kids, try to be the best you can be today. And I learned that from my dad. And, I remember his big talk, and he got it from another coach. If you're going to be a street sweeper, be the best street sweeper you can be. And so, I think that's kind of the grind right now until I just say, hey, I've had enough. And there's a lot of things that are impacting. You saw Coach Saban go through it. You see there's so many high school coaches stepping down now, and there's so many things outside of just what high school football used to be like that are impacting the game.
And Coach, man, before we get you out of here, I gotta make sure Conrad hears you. Now,
come on.
Now, back in the day, me and you, like if I wasn't working in this media game, I was probably going to be your offensive coordinator one of these days. I was going to pick it up, and you were going to have to teach me the ways.
I hear you.
But now, try to explain to Conrad my playing style when I was a young child, when I was a young lad in the game, because I try to explain to him like I was small, but there was
still small.
There was a lot of explosiveness behind this 150-pound running back. Am I right?
Yeah, I just remember the conversation was, Damon, you're never going to play on the next level. You're never going to be my running back till you get behind your shoulder pads. You can outrun everybody in the state, but until you show me you're going to run somebody over, you're not going to be the running back. You remember that conversation?
I do indeed.
And I don't know. He hit the weight room, he gained a pound, and decided he was thick. And
that sounds about right.
I think he ran over the water boy one day out of bounds, and I said, "Okay, that's tough enough." I guess the one word, electric. I mean, you get the ball to DM6, man, and crazy things were going to happen. He knew. I mean, he had great vision, and he dynamite. I guess you would say dynamite, because I mean, he could.
Coach, how much he pay you to say this stuff on the radio?
I'm just telling you, hey, proof's in the pudding, pull the film up.
Exactly. Check the tape. Man, Coach, man, I appreciate you hopping on with us, man. And again, congratulations for your induction in the Hall of Fame. I mean, we could sit back and have conversations for hours about just the impact that you've had on my life. And man, just much blessings to you and the family down there in Brewton, and y'all handle business on Friday, big dog.
Damon, I appreciate it. And I don't think, there's different kind of coaches, and I know I'm pretty rough, and but that makes the guys that stick, the guys, and we tell them you have an opportunity to be champion. I don't think y'all realize the impact you have on your coaches, and y'all have all had a great impact on me, you especially, and you still do to this day, and I appreciate it.
Absolutely, Coach Brent Hubbert, man, love you, big dog.
All right, man, love you. See you.
That's my former head coach, now the current head coach of TR Miller, Brent Hubbert, taking a trip down memory lane, just having some fun right there on the Buyers Right hotline for all your insurance, financial, and HR needs is Buyers Right Insurance, a Hickenbotham partner. So you got to hear it for yourself, Conrad. I was pretty decent, gained a little weight, went from about 140 to about 146 my senior year. Then they had me running, the power. I was like who I compare my game to? Derrick Henry.
I thought you were going to say Darren Sproles.
That's Derrick Henry. I had to run the power, the buck sweep, the counters. I was used to pass protection.
30 carries a game?
I ran it 36 times in the state championship.
Really? Oh,
yeah.
All right, there you go.
Just a little inhaler use here and there.
Yeah.
That's all it was. But hey, no, it was awesome. And again, congratulations to Coach Hubbert and his induction into the Alabama Sports Hall of Fame for the class of 2025. When we return here on Morning JOX, we'll take a look at the phone lines, the text lines, as we continue to recap the college football playoff rankings here on JOX 94.5. 6:49 here on Morning JOX. JOX 94.5. Damian Mitchell alongside Conrad Van Order. And you as well, 205-834-9450. Been seeing some of your text messages come in on the college football playoff rankings. They have been revealed last night. Let's see. David texted in. He says, if Army beats Notre Dame this weekend, that should catapult them up the rankings. Absolutely.
That is also part of that Big 12 getting left out scenario. That would certainly do them favors, and it would do us all a favor. We wouldn't have to watch Notre Dame in the playoff again.
Barry from Anniston says Texas and Penn State are definitely the most overranked.
I would agree with that, because I would still personally, as of right now that could change this weekend, I would give Indiana benefit of the doubt over Indiana, right? Because at least with Indiana, they've beaten everybody except for Michigan by double digits, and they still haven't played Ohio State. Now, if they lose to Ohio State and it's worse than Penn State's loss, then I don't have a problem being ahead of them. But again, you're rewarding Penn State for losing to Ohio State. Like, their resume is not significantly better than Indiana's.
Yeah. Somebody texted in and says, I'm a Tennessee fan, and I get Tennessee has not played the toughest schedule, and Tennessee does not have a dominating win in the conference. Yeah, they do.
Yeah, Alabama.
Yeah.
They have a win over a top 7 team right now.
Right. Still not enough. See what? You shouldn't have lost to Arkansas. That Arkansas game right there.
Well, and it's also, unfortunately, something that we were used to, really, in the college football playoff before, but especially in the BCS era, what was it about, right? When you lose football games. And now we're in a scenario where, unfortunately for Tennessee, you lost a game where you don't really have enough time to make up for those losses. Whereas Alabama, right, they were down there at 14-15 earlier in the year, and they've climbed their way back up because they lost early. It's just, I'm not saying it's right or wrong. It's just, that's how it works.
Somebody texted in and says, rewarding teams with schedules like Penn State, Texas, and Indiana is an absolute joke.
I agree.
Yes, 100%. Tim from Coleman says, with the new CFP rankings out, would you guys please discuss if you had to bet everything you own on one team right now to win the whole thing, who would it be and why? Ooh.
You know what my answer is.
Oh, yeah, Crimson Conrad. It's Alabama versus everybody.
I'm just saying, a lot of these projections have Alabama making it pretty far in the playoff. Just saying.
And hypothetically speaking, just say if I
can't pick Alabama?
No, if the bracket plays how it is, Alabama would go to Notre Dame, and then they would face Oregon. And then they would probably more than likely have Ohio State in the semis.
It'd be tough. No doubt about it.
I would if I had to put all my money on somebody right now, I would probably go Ohio State.
Okay.
I'd probably go Ohio State.
I will say, if I had to put my money on a team outside of the SEC, it would be Ohio State. I have a little more faith in them than Oregon. Just because I feel like, again, we're splitting hairs there. And I feel like, again, with all of these teams, they're all very good. There's just not a big separator in my mind between a lot of these teams, right? Like, it's just kind of who's your flavor of the week.
Right. Because Ole Miss, I think Ole Miss's defense against Georgia is just kind of the one sticking point in my brain of, all right, if they play like that and the offense continues just to don't blow it mode, I would probably sprinkle a little bit on Ole Miss.
But do you trust them to do that 4 games in a row?
That's another thing.
That's where the ultimate separator for me is between Alabama and Ole Miss, for example, because I think they're clearly the 2 best teams in the SEC right now. And again, it's based on the past, right? None of it's based on this year. It's just we've seen Alabama, and these are the moments that Alabama football lives for, right? The postseason, back against the wall, must-win scenarios. That's when they're at their best. We saw that with Ole Miss against Georgia, but are we going to see that again? And just 4 games in a row, it's hard for anybody.
Yeah. Miami,
no.
I don't feel confident.
I think they could win it. I think they could win a game or two because Cam Ward's incredible, but
right.
I don't think they could win it all.
Georgia?
If they play like again, and that's the thing, right? If any of these teams play to their best of their ability, there's a handful of teams that can win it all. It's just, who are we counting on? Because they all have warts, right? It's just, who do you think is playing better right now? And because that's my thing with Alabama, right? Alabama's playing the best football, in my opinion, over the last 3 weeks. I think they've been the most impressive team, arguably, in the entire country, because they've been playing near their A game every single week. Now, what happens if you don't get that A game? As we saw earlier in the year, it can get ugly. But that's the same thing for every team, right? You say the same thing what we saw against Wisconsin for Oregon, Ohio State against Nebraska, Texas against Arkansas this past. We can.
When they've needed to handle their business outside of 2 games, they've handled their business.
Yes. And the 2 games you lost, I mean, again,
it wasn't
they're losses, but they're not. There was never a game where you just sat there like, when Texas lost to Georgia, and you're like, man, are we even close to, competing at that level? It's, again, splitting hairs, but yeah, I'd put my money on the Tide right now.
Of course you are. Big Alabama guy. Because you're taking a trip to Norman, Oklahoma this weekend anyway to see him firsthand, baby.
That's right.
Roll
That's
Tide.
dedication.
Absolutely. You damn right it is. But the college football playoff rankings are here. Oregon's still at the top spot. For how much longer, though? Who knows? The Big Ten ringleader right now. They're just waiting to see who they're going to play in the conference championship game. We're going to see. So much more. Keep it locked right here. McElroy and Kublik in the morning. Those guys are next.